Issue 130. Sonic finally returns to Mobius after an annoyingly unspecified amount of time and finds some smoke coming from beyond the trees, causing him to see, much to my surprise, the surreal image of Knothole burning while a terrified minister is forced to marry Jeffrey and Hershey, who are dressed up in military gear and goggles. Huh? Also, he says skunk and wife instead of man and wife. Does that mean he has to say the name of the male species every time, even if it's multiple syllables? I now pronounce you elephant and wife. Doesn't really roll off the tongue as well. I'm so full of questions. Why are they just casually getting married in a situation like this? There's a SWAT-bot nearby. An Eggman in contact with them says that the two of them had escaped his prison somehow. Hope that's explained. But his SWAT-bots tracked them here anyways, hiding in one of his villages. He had razed the town to the ground for harboring spies. The word spies really confusing me since they couldn't mean spies for Eggman, right? At least he admits that he went overboard in what he did. Now that the people have to be relocated, Eggman's logic is that Jeffrey and Hershey will never get to tell anyone what they discovered in Eggman's arms factory, and ask them if it was worth it finding that out. Is he really delusional enough to buy that they wouldn't tell anyone ever, unless he's about to kill them? At least the people in the village are safe and are relocating rather than being roboticized or lining up for it. Then I'm promptly even more confused after the whole them acting like traitors despite being the blindest of lawful stupid thing, because I see a text bubble that looks inexplicably weird coming from off screen, so I don't know what it belongs to, saying Adam, a robot answering to it and calling the person father, and then Eggman with a text bubble that resembles that one, saying that they've honored the lover's request that they logically shouldn't have honored in the first place since they're enemies. Wait a minute, was the ADAM text box belong to Eggman? I couldn't tell because it wasn't connected to him. It took me several seconds to realize he was talking, even though I already knew that Adam had a father relationship with him before even reading the issue. Anyways, Sonic finally attacks the SWAT-bot with a spin dash after learning what he wants to know, and destroys all of the robots. The whole crowd cheers, including Jeffrey and Hershey. Jeffrey, who happily congratulates Sonic for being still alive. Okay, so I guess that kinda eases my immense confusion. That panel where he was getting married really made it look like he and Hershey burned down the village themselves. Because why the hell would they think getting married was appropriate at a time like that? It's like fiddling while Rome burns. Sonic is a great audience surrogate by asking what the hell's been going on. It turns out that, surprise surprise, Eggman went back on his promise of sharing the planet and declared war on the entire kingdom of Acorn. Sonic is for some reason blown away by this instead of being like, well, duh, what'd you expect? So much for an audience surrogate. Also, it's not like he hasn't been waging war the whole time anyways. Apparently, Eggman's amassed the atomic arsenal to prove that he means business now, and tried to have Jeffrey and Hershey executed before they'd be able to warn Knothole. Then he for some reason tried to tell Sonic not to warn Knothole, which was really annoying. At least that proves that this isn't Knothole, there's a village that looks exactly like it. Then we cut to Eggman asking someone who looks like a human woman with a really short, mannish hairstyle, but is actually the same robot who called him father, why they lost their live video feed. Eggman reminds Adam that he controls all of his SWAT bots because he put an AI in charge of something that big that could horribly backfire on him for some reason. I hate how they just plop this Adam stuff on you out of nowhere as if I missed an issue, which I know I haven't. I like the concept of Eggman having a sort of son. It's something that should have been tried a lot earlier, so it's a shame that he's going to be so temporary. Apparently, the entire phalanx, which I can only assume means army of robots, have been destroyed by Sonic. Eggman screams in fear and wastes a whole bunch of panels telling Adam who Sonic is when we already know that, ending off by saying that he had deleted all the files on Sonic because he thought he was dead. It is pretty sweet that he calls Adam M, as in the M part of Adam. He doesn't have to have that as a nickname for him. Finally, it's explained exactly how long Sonic's been gone from Mobius, only 6 weeks. Not a year like I thought before the space arc, but 6 weeks. That's much more acceptable, but I still have a really hard time believing that Knothole survived him being gone for that long when nobody else is nearly as capable of fighting robots as him, since we haven't seen Jeffrey or anyone else use ray guns or anything in a long while. Sonic is shocked at seeing Knothole look all metallic and different. They're going to forget all about it looking like this, by the way. And then thinks that he just assumed the same amount of time passed in Mobius as in outer space. Logically, because it'd be stupid otherwise. Did that wormhole warp him ahead in time? Never mind, I take back my compliment about being 6 weeks, because it turns out it really has been a year since the Zordon were beaten. Bullshit. absolute bullshit that Knothole had survived for that long without him. I'm sorry, but what happened literally every single time Sonic was put out of commission? Especially in the earliest comic days? Right away, the freedom fighters were captured and almost roboticized. Like when Sonic first lost his super speed. And they expect me to believe this hasn't happened to them without him? Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. He runs to the guards, who let him in fortunately instead of assuming he's a fake of Sonic sent by Eggman. Okay, so Knuckles and Mighty are talking to the King and Queen. So that means they still have some superpowered heroes protecting Knothole. Knuckles has his glide and super strength and climb and spiked Knuckles, albeit very mundane compared to Sonic, while Mighty has his super strength, and Espio can turn invisible. So that makes it slightly easier to buy that Knothole has survived a whole year without Sonic, but it's still bullshit. Knuckles explains to the King that if he and the Chaotix infiltrate Angel Island just after midnight, they can liberate it from Eggman's forces by lunchtime tomorrow. Then the King naturally denies his request on the basis that Knothole City requires his presence longer. Wait, does this mean all the echidnas on Angel Island were roboticized by Eggman, even Knuckles' mom? Or did they all escape to Albion? I hope so. Anyways, the King says that we know that Eggman's hatching a new plan in New Bengopolis, but they just don't know what. This is when Sonic shows up, much to the joy of everyone else, because I guess they want to believe he's alive so easily that it doesn't even occur to them the possibility that it's just a fake Sonic to fool them. You'd think Eggman would have tried that plan a million times by now. After it's pointed out that the King can walk again, which was foreshadowed a little by him using one of those walking things to hold onto with both arms trying to learn to walk again, but it's still pretty sudden. Sonic then says that he should have known Sally was crying at the statue of him. That's right, it's been an entire year, and she's still completely devastated by his death, as if it was literally just yesterday. She still hasn't gotten over it. She's still so miserable about it that she regularly comes to the statue for him to cry. That means a lot about her emotional state right now. Sonic kisses her on the lips for literally the second time as far as we know, although the paparazzi immediately annoy them and ruin the moment. It's annoying that after one of the guards is kind enough to ask the paparazzi to give them some privacy, another one of them asks, "Where were you raised? In a kennel?" That was annoying. Sally is asked if she's gonna say she thought he was dead and ask how he survived, and she says no. She knew Sonic would come back to her eventually, meaning that even after all that time, she was still just as deep in denial as she would have been when she first lost him. Normally that's not how the stages of grief work, you get past that phase. So she was actively deluding herself that he would come back after all that time as her only way of coping with losing him. I have no idea why she would love someone so completely opposite to her in personality and temperament that much, but apparently she does, and it really speaks how devastated she was at the idea of him dying. Every one of Sonic's friends and family run up to him happily, and then, uh-oh, this isn't Antoine anymore. Yep, I could tell right away because of that scar on his cheek. Not to mention the fact that he was eerily serious about greeting him, saluting him, saying, "I salute the hero in this return most unexpected." I'm just gonna be honest with you, because of my knowledge of the later issues instead of annoyingly playing dumb, this is Patch, Antoine's evil twin. I just think it'd be far more interesting to review the series acknowledging that this is an Antoine instead of playing dumb to the audience, examining his character the whole time. For example, you'd think that if Patch was as evil as he could be, he would have just killed all the freedom fighters by now, instead of playing the long and patient game. But I guess they didn't give enough credit to his intelligence. Although something interesting to note is that the writers on board were actually arguing amongst themselves over whether this is going to turn out to be Patch, or just be Antoine after some character development. I put that in quotes because it's not a positive development at all, he's stone serious and grim. I can understand why they would have considered that, though. For some reason, Sonic doesn't immediately ask anyone how Patch got that scar of his, I guess because he thought it'd be too painful of a memory? And instead he gets brought to Knothole's Technology, a telecommunications port with satellite uplink that lets the freedom fighters interface with anyone on the globe, and has an annoying name where I keep trying to spell it as the Technotree. Like, Technology, I guess it's a pun, but I don't like it. Also, Roto seems to be wearing spectacles now, which makes sense as he's a nerd, and make him look much older than he is. Not that I care, since he always seemed older than everyone else anyways from his bulky, tall design. I always pictured him as being like the adult of the group. The president of Station Square called them to warn them about Gun urging a preemptive strike against New Megalopolis. The Queen says it's unacceptable because thousands would perish, and the president says that Gun is calling it collateral damage. I can understand why they go to extreme lengths to get rid of Eggman, I really can. But what kind of government is Station Square where the military is completely separate and independent from the president, to the point of the president feeling the need to warn them about this urge. It's a military coup waiting to happen. It has to be that that's the case, because otherwise the president would just tell Gunn not to do that and it'd be fine. Then Eggman hacks into the Techno Tree, telling them to observe the still irradiated city Robotropolis, safe inside a protected force field. Wait, it's had that force field kept up that whole time? His robot forces are planning to penetrate that barrier and release the radiation on a knothole, which they didn't do a year earlier for some reason. Unless they kept getting stopped over and over again until Sonic's return. I don't understand how the force field stayed up after all that time though. The missiles should have destroyed the force field generator along with the rest of Robotropolis. And even if they didn't, I can only assume that the Freedom Fighters used some sort of magical crystals like Chaos Emeralds to keep that force field going all this time, because it would have run out of energy eventually. If it was being supplied with energy by a location outside the city, Eggman would have cut it off by now. And if the energy supply was internal, how the hell did that energy generator survive a nuclear explosion and keep going on its own all this time? Then Eggman explains that right behind him are two missiles, one aimed at Knothole, the other at Station Square. The story just ends right then and there. This issue is by Carl Bollers and reveals that Sonic was brought through a wormhole a year forwards in time to Mobius, which is used as an excuse for a time skip to bring forth some interesting changes to the status quo, including the king walking again, Knothole being transformed into metal buildings in a city that made me think the place was taken over by Eggman at first. Not sure why Rotor didn't at least paint the buildings to look less menacing and off-putting. And the Techno Tree, a telecommunications network being built. As well as Patch replacing Antoine who knows how long ago. I don't think it's ever actually specified when he did this. Sally is revealed to have been stuck in the same devastated emotional state as when Sonic first supposedly died, because she stayed in the denial stage of grief all that time, and was regularly coming to his statue and crying, as if it literally just happened the other day. As if she's stuck in the past. If that's not a trauma, nothing is. I was really expecting a certain something to happen in this issue since it's the 130th, a round number and all, but instead the two of them just kiss. Right away, with no problem. The time skip not destroying the Freedom Fighters from Sonic being gone even a week is explained as Knuckles, Espio, and Mighty, as well as the rest of the Chaotix, all substituting from that whole time. Which makes things the teeniest bit easier to swallow, I guess, a little. My biggest hated moment with the issue was how confusing that panel of Jeffrey and Hershey stopping to get married by a terrified minister in front of Eggman and a SWAT while a village it's burning is. It made me think they were traitors and their characters had been mangled. Couldn't they have gotten married at a less distasteful time? That was confusing. The rest of the issue is fine though, pretty interesting. The change to the status quo is great. Long-running series desperately need that kind of stuff to avoid becoming stagnant. Although it took a few issues for me to get totally reinvested again, since the changes were off-putting at first.